For 5 years, Amelia Vance lived under a name her billionaire father had carefully erased from public records. To Damien Cross, she was just Amelia Reed, his quiet wife, a woman with no powerful family, no inheritance, and no one important enough to defend her. He never questioned why she avoided the press, why she refused luxury, or why she always smiled whenever he bragged about chasing investors from Vance Global. Damien thought he was the powerful one. As CEO of Crosswell Properties, he believed his future was finally secure when his old lover, Vanessa Blake, returned with connections, charm, and a promise to help him win a massive partnership with Vance Global. Blinded by greed and pride, Damien signed the divorce papers, left town with Vanessa for 5 days, and returned acting like Amelia was already beneath him. But while he was gone, Vanessa ordered Amelia's belongings thrown onto the lawn, making sure the neighbors saw everything. Damien did nothing. Weeks later, he invited Amelia to his wedding, not out of kindness, but as one final insult. He wanted her to watch him marry the woman he believed had upgraded his life. But when the wedding began, the sky thundered. A private jet landed nearby. A convoy of black Rolls-Royces rolled into the venue. Guests stood in stunned silence as Amelia stepped out beside Roland Vance, the Trillionaire chairman Damien had begged for years to meet. Then the truth shattered the room. Amelia was not a poor abandoned wife. She was Roland's only daughter, the hidden heir who had quietly approved the investigation into Damien's company. By sunset, Vance Global cancelled the partnership. By nightfall, Damien's board removed him for fraud, betrayal, and misuse of company funds. His mansion, tied to company debt, was seized. And the man who threw Amelia's bags onto the lawn finally learned what it felt like to lose everything. The first time Damien Cross met Amelia Reed, she was standing in the rain outside a courthouse with a broken umbrella and a box of legal files pressed against her chest. He had been 29 then, not yet the polished CEO who wore tailored suits and spoke like every sentence deserved applause. Back then, he was only an ambitious property developer with debt behind his smile and hunger in his eyes. Crosswell Properties was still 2 rented rooms above a coffee shop, and Damien still drove a car that coughed every time he started it. Amelia had been working as a junior legal assistant at a non-profit housing clinic, or at least that was what everyone believed. She wore simple dresses, carried an old leather bag, and spoke in a calm voice that made people trust her before they understood why. Damien had bumped into her on the courthouse steps, scattering her papers across the wet pavement. He cursed, then apologized quickly when he saw her kneel to gather documents before the rain destroyed them. "Let me help," he said. She looked up at him, and for one small second, Damien forgot why he had been rushing. Her eyes were steady, not impressed, not frightened, not eager to please him. She simply handed him half the files and said, "Then help properly." That was the first thing about Amelia that unsettled him. She did not chase him. Women usually did. Damien was used to admiration. Even before he became rich, he had carried himself like wealth was only running late. He had a gift for making people believe in the version of him he had not yet become. But Amelia did not act as if he was special. She thanked him when the papers were safe, then walked away. Damien followed. He told himself it was curiosity. Later, when he remembered that day, he would tell himself it was love. Much later, when everything had collapsed around him and even his own mother stopped answering his calls, he would realize it had been neither. It had been pride. He wanted the one woman in the rain who did not look at him like a future king. For months, he pursued her with the confidence of a man used to winning. He sent flowers to the housing clinic. Amelia returned them with a note that said, "Donate the money instead." He invited her to expensive restaurants. She chose a small diner with cracked red seats and the best apple pie in town. He arrived in a suit. She arrived in a sweater with her hair pinned back and ink on her fingers. "Do you always make things difficult?" Damien asked her. "No," Amelia said. Only when people assume I'll make them easy." He laughed because he thought it was charming. He did not understand that she was warning him. Amelia Reed was not her real name. Reed had been her mother's maiden name, a name clean enough to disappear behind and ordinary enough to go unnoticed. Amelia had chosen it after her mother died, when the Vance name became a cage made of cameras, lawyers, bodyguards, and men who smiled too widely whenever money entered the room. Roland Vance had not wanted his daughter to vanish into a fake identity. He had built Vance Global from a shipping warehouse into an empire that swallowed hotels, banks, mines, software companies, private airports, ports, and luxury real estate across continents. Men feared his silence more than another man's shouting. Governments took his calls. Presidents waited when he asked for 5 minutes. But he had not been able to protect his wife from sickness, and after her funeral, he became terrified that the world would devour his daughter too. Amelia was 23 when she asked him for freedom. "I don't want every man I meet to know my net worth before he knows my middle name," she told him in his study. Roland stood beside the window, looking out over the private gardens of the Vance estate. He had aged 10 years in the 6 months after his wife died. The steel in him remained, but grief had carved shadows beneath his eyes. "You are my only child," he said. "And that is exactly why I need to know who I am without your name." Roland turned. "People are cruel without money, they are crueler with it." "I know." "No," he said softly. "You know what cruelty looks like from behind security gates. That is not the same as meeting it alone." Amelia walked to him and took his hand. "Then let me learn while I still have the choice." He refused for 3 weeks. Then one morning, a file appeared on Amelia's desk. New identification, a modest apartment lease, a clean employment history, a quiet arrangement through a law school friend of Roland's who ran a non-profit clinic and owed him a favor from 20 years earlier. At the bottom of the file was a handwritten note. "If you leave as Amelia Reed, you must live as Amelia Reed. No private jets, no Vance accounts, no calling me because a man disappoints you. You may return whenever you want, but if you choose this life, live it fully enough to know the truth." Beneath that, he had added one more line. "The people who love you when they think you have nothing are the only ones worth giving everything." Amelia kept that note folded inside her diary for years. She remembered it the night Damien proposed. By then, Crosswell Properties had moved out of the coffee shop building and into a real office downtown. Damien had become sharper, busier, more polished. Amelia had helped him more than he knew. She reviewed contracts while he slept, caught hidden clauses before they cost him money, corrected errors in investor proposals, and once convinced a hesitant lender to give him a second meeting simply by rewriting his entire pitch deck at 2 in the morning. Damien praised himself for the company's rise. Amelia let him. She had promised herself she would never buy love with power. If Damien loved her as Amelia Reed, then one day, when the time was right, she would tell him the truth. She imagined that moment more often than she admitted. She imagined him laughing in disbelief, then holding her tightly, not because she was rich, but because she had trusted him enough to show him the part of herself she kept hidden from the world. On the night he proposed, Damien took her to the rooftop of his first completed apartment building. The city glittered beneath them. The wind carried the smell of expensive champagne and fresh paint. "I built this," Damien said, looking over the skyline. Amelia smiled. "You did." He took her hand. "And I'm going to build more, towers, hotels, entire districts. People are going to know the Cross name." She looked at him carefully. "Is that what you want most?" He turned to her. "No." Then he knelt and opened the ring box. "What I want most is for you to be beside me when it happens." The diamond was modest. His hands were trembling. For that reason alone, Amelia believed him. She said yes. Roland Vance did not attend the wedding. No one from Amelia's true life did. To Damien, she explained that her father was distant and her family complicated. It was not entirely a lie. Roland hated the arrangement. But he respected her choice. He sent no gift in his own name, only a small antique locket that had belonged to Amelia's mother. Inside it was engraved a tiny V. Damien noticed it on their wedding night. "Pretty," he said, touching it lightly. "Family heirloom." "Yes," Amelia said. "Worth anything." She looked at him. He smiled as if joking. "Only to me," she replied. He kissed her forehead and told her she was too sentimental. That was one of the first cracks. Small cracks rarely sound dangerous at the beginning. They arrive softly, like polite knocks on a locked door. Damien began correcting her in public. At first it was small. If Amelia spoke during business dinners, Damien would place a hand over hers and say, "What she means is," then he would repeat her idea in his own words and take the room's admiration. When she suggested caution on a risky land deal, he laughed and told his executives, "My wife worries like an old accountant." 2 months later, that land deal nearly failed because of a zoning restriction Amelia had warned him about. Damien fixed it by using the very strategy she had recommended. At the celebration dinner, he raised a glass and said, "Gentlemen, that is why instinct matters." Amelia sat beside him with a quiet smile, feeling something inside her step backward. She still loved him, or thought she did. Love, she discovered, could become a habit before it became a prison. Years passed, Crosswell Properties expanded. Damien became wealthier, louder, and less reachable. He moved them into a mansion owned under a Crosswell subsidiary, insisting it made financial sense. "No need to buy personally when the company can hold the asset," he told Amelia. She knew enough to understand the danger. Is that wise? Damien barely looked up from his phone. "That's why I have accountants. You should still understand what they're doing." "I do understand." "Then explain the debt structure to me." His eyes hardened. "Amelia, please don't start." That became his favorite phrase whenever she sounded too intelligent. "Don't start. Don't worry. Don't embarrass me. Don't speak on things you don't understand." Only one person still spoke to Amelia as if she understood everything: her father. Roland never called often, that had been their agreement, but every month, on the date of her mother's death, a private number would appear on her phone. Amelia would step into the garden, the pantry, a guest bathroom, anywhere Damien was not listening, and answer. "Are you well?" Roland would ask. "I'm fine." Fine is what people say when they are negotiating with pain. She would smile despite herself. "You taught me that." "I taught you many things. You ignored the useful ones." "I married Damien, father. I didn't join a battlefield." Sometimes marriage becomes one before the wife notices. Amelia hated when he said things like that. She hated it more because a part of her knew he was right. The first time Roland saw Damien in person after the wedding was at a charity gala in Manhattan. Damien had spent 2 months trying to get invited because he had heard Vance global executives would attend. He wore a black tuxedo, rehearsed his introduction in the mirror, and told Amelia not to hover because he needed to network seriously. Amelia wore a navy dress, modest and elegant, with her mother's locket at her throat. She saw her father across the ballroom before Damien did. Roland Vance stood surrounded by senators, banking heirs, and foreign investors, yet he looked directly at Amelia as if everyone else had become furniture. For one dangerous second, his expression softened. Amelia gave the smallest shake of her head. "Not here." Roland's face became unreadable again. Damien noticed the direction of her gaze. "Do you know him?" Amelia's heartbeat slowed. "Who?" "Roland Vance." "I know of him." Damien scoffed. "Everyone knows of him, I mean personally." "No." The lie tasted bitter. Damien straightened his jacket. "I'm going to introduce myself." "Damien, this may not be the best time." "You don't get to Roland Vance by waiting for the best time. She wanted to tell him that Roland hated being approached by men who smelled of desperation and expensive cologne. She wanted to tell him that her father could read arrogance in the angle of a handshake. She wanted to save him from embarrassing himself. Instead, she stayed silent. Damien returned 20 minutes later with a tight jaw. "How did it go?" Amelia asked. "He was polite." "That meant badly." Roland had listened to Damien's rehearsed pitch for Crosswell's expansion strategy, asked 2 questions Damien could not properly answer, then said, "You have ambition. Return when you have discipline." Damien smiled through the insult because he needed the connection, but on the ride home, he blamed Amelia. "You could have helped," he snapped. "How? You just stood there. You told me not to hover." "I didn't mean disappear like a ghost. You know legal language. You could have added something. So you wanted me silent until you needed me useful." He looked out the window. "That's not what I said." "No," Amelia replied. "It's only what you meant." He did not speak to her for the rest of the ride. That night, Roland sent one text to Amelia. "He sees a throne where there is only a chair." Amelia deleted the message before Damien could see it. The warning should have stayed with her. Instead, she buried it beneath excuses. Damien was stressed. Damien carried pressure. Damien had grown up poor. Damien needed success to feel safe. Damien loved her in his way. Then Vanessa Blake returned. She entered Crosswell like perfume entering a room before the woman wearing it appeared. Every employee knew she had arrived before they met her. She wore cream suits, red lipstick, and a confidence that never asked permission. She had known Damien years before Amelia, back when Damien was a hungry business student and Vanessa was the woman everyone expected him to marry. The story, according to Damien, was simple. "We dated briefly," he told Amelia one evening, adjusting his cufflinks before a dinner Vanessa had arranged with potential investors. "It ended. No drama." "Then why have you mentioned her name 3 times this week and never once before?" Damien smiled into the mirror because she just became useful. The word struck Amelia harder than it should have. Useful. That was how Damien valued people when he was not pretending otherwise. Vanessa claimed she had connections to Vance Global's hospitality division. Her cousin knew someone. Her former mentor had consulted for a subsidiary. She had attended private events where Vance executives were present. None of it was a lie exactly, but it was stitched together with exaggeration until Damien saw a golden road where there was only polished smoke. Amelia recognized the type immediately. Vanessa did not love Damien, she loved access. She saw his company as a ladder and his ego as the easiest rung. When Amelia tried to warn him, Damien laughed. "You're jealous. I'm observant. You've never liked women who know how to move in powerful circles." Amelia almost smiled. "Is that what you think?" "I think Vanessa understands the world I'm entering." "And I do." He looked at her then, really looked, but not enough to see her. His gaze moved over her simple cardigan, her bare nails, her quiet face. "You understand loyalty," he said. "That's different." The insult wore the clothing of a compliment. Vanessa understood how to widen cracks. She praised Damien loudly in meetings. She touched his arm lightly when she laughed. She listened to his stories as if each one deserved to be preserved in marble. She asked Amelia questions that sounded sweet in public and cruel in private. "Do you ever get lonely in that big house while Damien builds the future? Did Damien ever tell you how ambitious he used to be before he became so settled?" "You're lucky, Amelia. Some women have to fight to keep a man like that excited." Amelia answered with calm courtesy, and Vanessa mistook restraint for weakness. So did Damien. The final year of their marriage became a house filled with invisible smoke. Damien came home late, his phone face down, his passwords changed. He said the office needed him. Vanessa needed help closing investor meetings. The Vance deal required charm, speed, discretion. One night, Amelia found a folder on Damien's desk marked VANCE Global Strategic Entry. Inside were projections built on inflated property values, disguised liabilities, and photographs of luxury assets Crosswell did not truly own. There were also invoices from consulting firms Amelia had never heard of, charging enormous fees for vague services. She photographed every page. Not because she wanted revenge. Because somewhere deep inside, the daughter Roland Vance had raised understood that evidence was not anger. Evidence was protection. The next morning, she asked Damien about the folder. He slammed it shut. "Why were you in my office?" "I was bringing your watch. You left it by the sink." "That doesn't explain why you opened confidential documents." "The folder was open." "Don't lie to me." Amelia stared at him. The room went very still. Damien had lied to her so many times by then that the accusation felt almost impressive. "Be careful," she said quietly. "He laughed once, or what?" She thought of her father. She thought of the Vance name sitting beneath her skin like buried fire. She thought of all the times she had chosen mercy because she feared power would make her love less pure. "Or one day," she said, "you'll speak to someone you should have listened to." Damien stepped close, lowering his voice. "You are my wife, Amelia, not my auditor." That sentence decided more than he knew. 2 weeks later, Damien came home with divorce papers. It was raining, just as it had been the day they met. Amelia noticed that first, and for a painful moment, memory folded over the present. The younger Damien on the courthouse steps, his wet hair, his awkward apology, the way he gathered her papers from the pavement as if saving them mattered. The man standing in their living room now wore a charcoal suit and an expression rehearsed for cruelty. Vanessa waited in the car outside. Amelia saw her silhouette through the curtains. Damien placed the papers on the glass table between them. "This doesn't need to be ugly," he said. Amelia looked at the envelope, then at him. "It already is." He exhaled, impatient. "We've grown apart." "No, Damien, you walked away and called the distance growth." His jaw tightened. "Vanessa and I have history. You and I have vows. Don't make this dramatic." That almost made her laugh. The audacity of a man standing in his marital home, with his mistress outside, telling his wife not to make things dramatic. Amelia picked up the papers. They were not final court documents, only a separation agreement prepared by Damien's attorney. The terms were insulting. She would leave the mansion immediately. She would claim no stake in Crosswell. She would keep her personal belongings and a modest payout Damien described as generous. He truly believed she had nothing. He truly believed the life she had shared with him was his to divide. "You expect me to sign this?" she asked. "I expect you to be reasonable." "Reasonable," she repeated. Damien softened his voice in the way he did when he wanted to sound noble. "I don't want to hurt you. You brought her here. She's waiting because we have a flight." "A flight?" "Business and personal," he paused. "We'll be gone a few days." Amelia stared at him long enough for discomfort to flicker across his face. "Sign before I return," he said. "It will be easier for everyone." There it was. Not for her. For everyone. For him, for Vanessa. For his mother, Evelyn, who had never hidden her disappointment that Damien married a woman without a famous surname. For the executives who saw Amelia as a decorative shadow beside the man taking credit for her wisdom. For the neighbors who smiled at charity lunches and whispered that Damien Cross could have married higher. Amelia picked up a pen. Damien blinked, surprised. She signed. Not because he had won. Because the agreement was worthless against the truth, and she no longer felt the need to explain that to him. When she placed the pen down, Damien looked almost disappointed. He had expected tears, begging, a scene he could retell later to prove how difficult she had been. Instead, Amelia removed her wedding ring and placed it on top of the papers. "Enjoy your flight," she said. His pride recovered quickly. "You'll thank me one day." "No," she replied, "but you will remember me." Damien left with Vanessa before sunset. For 5 days, Amelia moved through the mansion like a ghost, packing away proof of her own patience. She took photographs of financial documents Damien had carelessly stored at home. She copied emails that connected Vanessa to suspicious consulting payments. She saved messages from Evelyn Cross instructing Damien to remove that woman before the Vance people think you lack standards. Then she packed only what mattered. Her mother's locket, her diary, a small box of old letters from Roland. The first contract she had ever corrected for Damien, still marked in red ink. She did not take the designer bags Damien had bought her after arguments, or the jewelry he selected because it looked expensive enough to replace an apology. Those things belonged to a marriage where love had been confused with display. On the 4th night, Amelia called her father. Roland answered on the first ring. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then he said, "Tell me." Amelia sat on the bedroom floor beside half-filled boxes. He asked for a divorce. Roland's silence changed temperature. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Are you alone?" "Yes." "Do you want me to come?" The child in her wanted to say yes. The woman she had become closed her eyes. "Not yet." Roland inhaled slowly. "Amelia, I need to finish this properly. You owe him nothing proper. I owe myself proof that I did not run." Another silence. Then Roland said, "Vance Global began formal due diligence on Crosswell 2 weeks ago." Amelia opened her eyes. "You knew?" "I suspected. His people have been begging for a partnership for months. Your name never entered the process. I kept that wall because you asked me to, but my compliance team found problems." "What kind?" "The kind that makes arrogant men sweat." Amelia looked toward Damien's empty closet. "Father, I will not touch him because he broke your heart," Roland said. "I am not that undisciplined." A sad smile moved across her face. "But if he broke the law," Roland continued, "if he misused corporate funds, misled investors, falsified valuations, or used my company's name to build a lie, then he is not your husband. He is a liability." "He's both," Amelia whispered. "No," Roland said. "One was your choice, the other is mine." On the 5th day, Vanessa came to the mansion with 2 assistants and a locksmith. Amelia was not home when they arrived. She had gone to the housing clinic where she used to work, needing to remember who she had been before love made her quiet. By the time she returned, her bags were on the lawn. Not all of them, just enough to make a picture. Her clothes had been stuffed carelessly into suitcases. A box of books had split open, pages bent against the grass. A framed photograph from her wedding lay face down near the driveway. The staff stood awkwardly near the entrance, none brave enough to intervene. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Vanessa stood on the front steps wearing sunglasses and a white dress, smiling as if she owned sunlight. "Amelia," she called, "I hope this isn't too uncomfortable." Damien thought it would be best if the house was cleared before he returned. Amelia walked slowly to the lawn and lifted the fallen wedding photograph. The glass had cracked across Damien's face. Foreshadowing did not always whisper. Sometimes it announced itself in broken glass. "Damien told you to do this?" Amelia asked. Vanessa removed her sunglasses. "He didn't stop it." That was the answer that mattered. One of the housekeepers, Mrs. Alvarez, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Cross, I tried." "It's all right," Amelia said gently. "It is not all right," the older woman whispered. Amelia looked at her belongings scattered across the lawn, then at Vanessa. "No," she said, "it is." A black sedan pulled up behind her. Not one of Damien's cars. Elias Ward stepped out. He had been Roland's chief security officer for 20 years, though to most people he looked like a dignified older driver in a dark suit. Vanessa glanced at him and dismissed him instantly. "Ma'am," Elias said to Amelia, using the tone he had used since she was a girl learning to ride horses on the Vance estate. Vanessa frowned at the respect in his voice. Amelia handed him the cracked photograph. "Please pack everything that belongs to me." "Yes, Miss Vance." The name landed softly. Only Vanessa was close enough to hear it. Her smile faltered. "What did he call you?" she asked. Amelia met her eyes. "Someone you should not have underestimated." Then she turned and walked away. When Damien returned that evening, tanned from 5 days in the Caribbean and smelling of Vanessa's perfume, he found Amelia gone and her belongings removed. Vanessa told him the story with careful edits. She made it sound as if Amelia had caused a scene, as if she had left in jealous rage, as if the older driver had been some strange relative collecting her out of pity. Damien barely listened. He was too pleased. The house looked cleaner without Amelia's books, her flowers, her quiet evidence of a life that did not revolve around his ambition. Vanessa had already moved several dresses into the master closet. Evelyn Cross arrived with champagne and kissed her son on both cheeks. "You did the right thing," Evelyn said. "That girl was never suited for where you're going." Damien accepted the praise like a crown. Still that night, when Vanessa slept beside him in the bed he had once shared with Amelia, Damien woke at 2:14 a.m. and stared toward the chair by the window. Amelia used to sit there reading when she could not sleep. For one brief second, regret entered the room. Then Damien rolled over and chose not to recognize it. The wedding plans began immediately. Vanessa wanted speed. She said it was romantic, proof that she and Damien had wasted enough years apart. Evelyn agreed. She wanted society to see her son upgraded before rumors could grow messy. Damien wanted the wedding to double as a business event. "Powerful people respect decisive men," he told Vanessa. Powerful people, Amelia knew, also noticed desperate ones. The venue Vanessa chose was the Halcyon Crest Estate, a luxury property outside the city with a private airstrip nearby, manicured lawns, and a ballroom famous for hosting political fundraisers. Damien loved it because investors would photograph well there. Vanessa loved it because it looked like old money. Neither of them knew Vance Hospitality quietly owned 60% of the management company that controlled the estate. Amelia knew. She had once spent a summer reviewing acquisition files for her father and remembered the Halcyon Crest's history because her mother had loved its rose gardens. When the wedding invitation arrived at Amelia's temporary apartment, she was sitting across from Roland at a small dining table. It was not truly a temporary apartment. It was a penthouse under a trust name with bulletproof glass, private elevator access, and art worth more than Damien's entire car collection. But compared to the Vance estate, it was modest, and Amelia appreciated that her father had not forced her back into the mansion of her childhood. Roland watched her open the envelope. The invitation was thick, cream-colored, arrogant. "Mr. Damien Cross and Ms. Vanessa Blake request the honor of your presence." A smaller card slipped out. Amelia recognized Damien's handwriting. "No hard feelings, come see what ambition looks like." Roland saw her face change. "What is it?" he asked. She handed him the card. Her father read it once, then he placed it on the table with terrifying care. "There are men," he said, "who survive only because decent people delay consequences." Amelia touched the edge of the invitation. "Did your team finish the investigation?" Roland leaned back. "Enough to act, not enough to satisfy me." What did they find? Crosswell inflated property valuations to secure loans. Damien used company assets for personal expenses, including the mansion. Vanessa's consulting firm received payments routed through 3 shell vendors. Several board members were misled about the Vance Global Partnership. He also used our name in investor materials without authorization. Amelia closed her eyes. She had known there were problems. Hearing them listed aloud still hurt. Will he go to prison? She asked. That depends on regulators and prosecutors. My first concern is protecting Vance Global from contamination. And Crosswell employees. Roland's expression softened slightly. I know they matter to you. They didn't throw my bags on the lawn. No, they will be protected where possible. Amelia nodded. Roland studied her. You are thinking of attending. He invited me. He invited Amelia Reed. She looked at him, then Amelia Vance should answer. For the first time in years, Roland smiled. Not warmly. Proudly. The days before the wedding moved like the final seconds before lightning strikes. Damien, drunk on his own future, barely noticed the signs around him. His chief financial officer resigned suddenly, citing family reasons. One of Crosswell's lenders requested urgent clarification on collateral documents. A board member who had always flattered him stopped taking his calls. Vance Global postponed the final partnership announcement twice, each time with language so polite it sounded harmless. Amelia would have heard the alarm bells. Damien heard only applause that had not arrived yet. Vanessa, however, became nervous. She had built her confidence on performance, and performance required an audience willing to believe. But certain facts began shifting beneath her feet. One of her shell vendors received a subpoena. A former assistant stopped replying. A contact inside Vance Hospitality warned her that unknown executives had requested full files on the Halcyon Crest event. The night before the wedding, Vanessa stood in Damien's bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Have you heard anything from Amelia? She asked. Damien was buttoning his shirt. Why would I? She was too calm that day. What day? When I put her things outside. He smirked. You're worried about Amelia. I don't like women who lose quietly. Damien came up behind her and kissed her shoulder. She lost because she had nothing. Vanessa looked at their reflection. For the first time, the sentence did not comfort her. Across the city, Amelia stood in front of a full-length mirror while a stylist adjusted the sleeve of her ivory suit. It was not a wedding guest dress. It was softer than armor, sharper than grief, and elegant enough to silence a room without asking. Her mother's locket rested at her throat. Roland entered without knocking. Fathers who had paid for the building rarely remembered doors as boundaries. When he saw her, his face changed. You look like your mother. Amelia turned. That used to hurt when people said it, she admitted. Now it feels like instruction. Roland walked closer. She would not have wanted this pain for you. No, but she would have wanted you to stand up from it. Amelia swallowed. For years she had thought hiding her name made her free. In some ways, it had. She had learned how strangers treated a woman without visible power. She had learned that kindness from ordinary people could be more honest than admiration from elites. She had learned that love without respect eventually becomes a beautifully decorated cage. But she had also mistaken silence for humility. That was the lesson that burned. Her father held out his hand. In his palm was a ring Amelia had not seen since childhood, her mother's signet ring bearing the Vance crest in tiny engraved detail. I kept this for the day you stopped running from your name, Roland said. Amelia looked down at it. I wasn't running from the name. No, Roland said softly, you were running from what people might become after hearing it. He was right. She put on the ring. It fit perfectly. The wedding morning dawned bright and cloudless. the kind of day photographers praised and liars mistook for blessing. Halcyon Crest had been transformed into a display of wealth that was not quite wealth, taste that was not quite taste, romance that looked suspiciously like marketing. White roses lined the aisle, crystal chandeliers glittered above the reception hall, a string quartet played near the garden fountain. Cameras waited. Investors mingled with politicians, influencers, real estate executives, and gossip columnists who had been discreetly invited because Vanessa believed humiliation had more value when witnessed. Damien stood near the altar in a black tuxedo, smiling like a man already framed in history. His mother hovered nearby, adjusting his lapel though it needed no adjusting. "Look at you," Evelyn said, eyes shining. "This is the life you were meant for." Damien glanced over the crowd. Vance Global sent no one. "Maybe they'll arrive for the reception." They confirmed attendance. Vanessa said they did. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Vanessa had been vague about that detail all morning. Before he could ask more, the wedding coordinator rushed toward him with a headset and a strained smile. "Mr. Cross, there's a slight issue near the airstrip." Damien frowned. "What issue?" "A private aircraft requested landing clearance. This estate has private landings all the time." "Yes, sir, but this one is unscheduled." Evelyn stiffened. "Is it a problem?" The coordinator listened to her earpiece, her face drained of color. "No," she said, "not a problem. It's Vance Global clearance." Damien's entire body sharpened. "Vance." Guests began turning toward the distant sound before anyone answered. The sky thundered. It was not storm thunder. It was the deep, controlled roar of engines descending. At first, people smiled, assuming it was some extravagant surprise arranged by Damien. Then the first black Rolls-Royce appeared at the long estate driveway. Then another, 6 in total, polished like mirrors, moving with slow authority past the fountains and camera crews. The string quartet faltered. Vanessa appeared at the far end of the aisle in her wedding gown and stopped walking. Everyone looked toward the cars. Damien's heart hammered. For one wild second, he believed Vanessa had done it. She had brought Roland Vance to his wedding. She had secured the final symbol of his arrival. Then the first driver stepped out. Elias Ward. Damien did not recognize him. Vanessa did. Her bouquet trembled slightly. Elias opened the rear door of the center car. Amelia stepped out. The silence that followed was not empty. It was alive, spreading from guest to guest like fire finding dry grass. She looked nothing like the woman Damien had last seen in the living room with divorce papers on the table, not because her face had changed, but because she was no longer making herself smaller for him. Her ivory suit caught the sunlight. Her mother's locket shone at her throat. On her hand, the Vance signet ring flashed once. Damien stared. "What is she doing here?" Evelyn hissed. Vanessa said nothing. Then Roland Vance stepped out behind Amelia. The world seemed to drop out from under Damien's feet. He knew that face. Every ambitious executive knew that face. Roland Vance had been on magazine covers, economic panels, government advisory boards, and private lists men like Damien would have paid fortunes to access. He was older now than his public photographs, but more formidable in person, tall and severe in a dark suit, with silver hair and eyes that could reduce a lie to ash. A murmur passed through the crowd. "Is that Roland Vance? Why is he with Amelia?" Wait, Damien's ex-wife came with him. Vanessa's father, who had been smiling moments earlier, lowered his champagne glass. Damien forced himself to move. He walked down the aisle toward them, smiling too widely. "Mr. Vance," he said, extending his hand, "this is an honor. I wasn't informed you'd be attending." Roland looked at Damien's hand as if it were an unsigned confession. He did not take it. "I was invited," Roland said. Damien blinked. You were. Amelia lifted the cream invitation. I was, she said. Damien's smile twitched. Amelia, this is not the moment for whatever performance you're attempting. Roland turned his head slowly toward his daughter. Did he often speak to you like that? The question was calm. That made it worse. Amelia looked at Damien, and in her eyes he saw 5 years he had never bothered to read. Yes, she said, but usually when no one important was listening. A few guests gasped. Evelyn marched forward, face tight with fury. How dare you come here to embarrass my son? Roland's gaze moved to her. Evelyn stopped mid-step. Power recognizes power, so does fear. You must be Mrs. Cross, Roland said. I have read your messages. Her face paled. Damien turned sharply. What messages? The ones advising your son to remove his wife before my company mistook loyalty for weakness. Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. Vanessa finally moved. She came down the aisle slowly, her wedding dress whispering across the grass. Mr. Vance, she said, voice sweet but unsteady, I'm sure there has been some confusion. Roland looked at her. Ms. Blake, he said, there has been no confusion, only documentation. The word documentation struck Vanessa like a slap. Damien looked from Roland to Amelia. His mind raced, grabbing at explanations and finding none strong enough to hold. Amelia, he said quietly, what is going on? For the first time since he had known her, she did not protect him from the answer. My name is Amelia Vance. Someone in the crowd cried out. Damien went still. No, he said. Amelia's voice remained level. Reed was my mother's name. I used it because I wanted a life that wasn't purchased before I entered the room. Damien shook his head. No, you would have told me. I planned to. When? When I knew you loved me enough not to change. The words landed cleanly. Damien's face shifted from disbelief to calculation. Amelia saw the exact moment his mind turned from betrayal to opportunity. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Amelia, listen. Whatever happened between us, we can talk privately. There is nothing private left. Don't do this here. You invited me here. I didn't know that I was someone you should respect. His mouth shut. Roland glanced toward Elias. Elias handed a leather folder to Amelia. She opened it. Damien's stomach dropped. Around them, phones lifted, cameras zoomed. The wedding that was supposed to crown him had become a courtroom without walls. Amelia did not raise her voice. Crosswell Properties submitted partnership materials to Vance Global containing inflated valuations, unauthorized use of Vance Global's name, and misleading financial projections. Company funds were used for personal luxury expenses, including travel, private events, and the residence Damien occupied after our separation. Damien looked at the guests, then at the board members standing near the fountain. Amelia, he warned. She continued. Payments were routed through consulting entities connected to Vanessa Blake. Several invoices are now under review for fraud. The board has been notified. Lenders have been notified. Regulators will receive the completed file. Vanessa whispered, you can't prove anything. Amelia looked at her gently. That gentleness frightened Vanessa more than anger would have. You should have checked who owned the estate management company before you chose the venue, Amelia said. Vanessa's lips parted. The servers, the vendor contracts, the security feeds, the payment records, Amelia continued. All of them were easier to obtain than you expected. Damien turned to Roland, desperation cracking through his performance. Mr. Vance, surely this can be handled professionally. I built Crosswell from nothing. There are employees, investors. And you risked them all, Roland said. Do not hide behind workers you endangered. I can explain. You had months to explain during due diligence. I didn't know the concerns were this serious. Because serious men read what they sign. The sentence echoed something Damien had heard years before at the gala. Return when you have discipline. He remembered it now. Too late. A black SUV pulled in behind the Rolls-Royces. 3 men and 1 woman stepped out, all in dark business attire. Crosswell's board chair, Martin Hale, came with them, his face ashen. Damien stared. Martin. Martin did not meet his eyes. We need to convene immediately, Martin said. At my wedding. Martin looked around bitterly. This is no longer a wedding, it's a liability event. The crowd erupted in whispers. Evelyn grabbed Damien's arm. Don't let them speak to you this way. Damien pulled free. Mother, stop. It was the first sensible thing he had said all morning. Vanessa stepped back, suddenly aware that everyone was watching her not as a bride, but as evidence wearing white. Damien, she whispered, tell them this is ridiculous. But Damien was looking at Amelia. Not the crowd, not Roland, not the board. Amelia. For 5 years, she had sat across from him at breakfast. She had folded laundry while he talked on investor calls. She had placed a hand on his shoulder when deals collapsed. She had warned him about contracts, people, risks, arrogance. She had known the name he worshipped from the inside, and she had never once used it to make him feel small. He had done that to her anyway. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, and this time the question carried something almost human. Amelia's face softened, but only with sadness. Because every time I tried to show you I was more than you assumed, you punished me for it. Damien flinched. You didn't need my last name to respect me, she said. You only needed character. There are moments when a man sees his reflection clearly and hates the mirror for doing its job. Damien hated Amelia then. Not because she lied. Because she had given him every chance to be better before revealing he had failed. The board meeting happened in the estate's private library while guests waited outside pretending not to listen. Damien argued. Martin presented documents. Vance Global's legal team confirmed the cancelled partnership. Lenders froze lines of credit pending review. Insurance carriers requested notice. Investors demanded removal before markets opened Monday. By 5:47 p.m., Damien Cross was no longer CEO of Crosswell Properties. By 6:20 p.m., Vanessa Blake had locked herself in the bridal suite, screaming at her attorney over the phone. By 7:05 p.m., Evelyn Cross sat alone in the front row of white wedding chairs, staring at the aisle where her son's victory had died. Amelia did not attend the board vote. She walked through the rose garden instead. The halcyon crest roses had been her mother's favorite shade of white, not the cold white of Vanessa's gown, but a warmer color, almost cream, like old letters kept safe in a drawer. Roland found her near the fountain. It is done, he said. No, Amelia replied, it's begun. He stood beside her. You pity him. I pity who he could have been. That is a dangerous habit. I know. Roland looked out over the garden. When your mother first met me, I was arrogant. Amelia glanced at him. He almost smiled. Not like him, do not insult me by thinking it. Despite everything, Amelia laughed softly. She told me once that power does not corrupt character, Roland continued. It reveals whether character was ever there. Amelia touched her locket. What did power reveal in me today? She asked. Roland was quiet for a long moment. Restraint, he said, and finally self-respect. Behind them, footsteps approached on the gravel path. Damien. His bow tie hung loose around his neck. His face looked older by 20 years. The arrogance had not disappeared completely, but panic had torn holes in it. Mr. Vance, he began. Roland turned. No. Damien stopped. You will not appeal to me over my daughter's shoulder, Roland said. Speak to her if she allows it. Amelia remained, facing the fountain. Damien swallowed. May I? She turned. He struggled then. Apology did not come naturally to him. He had spent his life converting fault into strategy, but strategy had failed, charm had failed, Vanessa had failed, his mother's praise had failed. Only Amelia remained. I didn't know, he said. That is not an apology. I know. Do you? He looked down. I treated you badly. Yes. I humiliated you. Yes. I let Vanessa put your things outside. Amelia's gaze sharpened. You did more than let her. He breathed in. I wanted you to feel small, he admitted, because leaving was easier if I believed you were. There it was, not enough, but true enough to matter. Amelia nodded once. Damien stepped closer. Roland's posture changed, and Damien wisely stopped. Can you help me? Damien asked. The question was so honest, so bare, that it almost hurt. No, Amelia said. His face collapsed in disbelief. Amelia. I helped you for 5 years. I'll lose everything. You risked everything. My home was bought through company debt. My position was built on deception. My reputation. You destroyed it when you mistook cruelty for strength. He covered his mouth with one hand, turning slightly away. For a moment, Amelia saw the man from the courthouse steps again, wet from rain, trying to gather pages before they were ruined. She wondered when he had decided people were only papers to step over on his way up. Maybe the answer was always. Maybe love had made her slow to read it. Was any of it real? He asked. Amelia's throat tightened. My love was. He looked at her. Yours, she said, depended too much on who you thought I was beneath you. The words ended him more completely than the board vote. Damien left the garden without another argument. That night, the Halcyon Crest ballroom stood half-lit and abandoned. Caterers packed untouched food into silver containers. Florists removed roses from arches. The cake remained uncut, a towering white monument to a marriage that had not happened. Vanessa tried to leave through a side entrance, but reporters had already gathered. Someone had leaked the story, perhaps a guest, perhaps a staff member, perhaps humiliation, once invited, simply found its own exits. Ms. Blake, did you know about the Croswell investigation? Were payments made to your consulting firm? Did you know Damien Cross was married when your relationship resumed? Vanessa covered her face and rushed into a car. Evelyn left with a friend, refusing to look at her son. Damien returned to the mansion after midnight and found a notice taped to the door. Access suspended pending asset review. His keycard no longer worked. At first he laughed. It came out sharp and broken. This was temporary, a misunderstanding. Martin would fix it. His attorneys would argue. His mother would call someone. Vanessa would explain her vendor records. The lenders would calm down. Amelia would soften. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. I need distance until my legal team understands exposure. Please don't contact me for now. He read it 3 times. Then his mother called. For 1 second, relief flooded him. He answered, Mom. Damien, what have you done? Evelyn's voice was trembling with fury and fear. I need somewhere to stay tonight. A pause. You know I would, but reporters are outside my building. My friends are asking questions. This is not a good time. He stood outside the dark mansion, his tuxedo wrinkled, the night air cold against his face. Not a good time, he repeated. You should speak to your lawyers. I'm your son. And you have made a disaster I warned you to avoid by being careless. He almost laughed again. "You told me to leave Amelia." "I told you to marry wisely," Evelyn snapped, "not invite scandal to the altar." The call ended. Damien stared at the phone. For years he had believed himself surrounded by loyalty, investors who toasted him, employees who obeyed him, a mother who praised him, a lover who admired him, a wife who loved him. Now the first three had vanished, the fourth had retreated, and the fifth had finally stopped saving him. He booked a hotel suite with a corporate card. Declined. He tried another. Declined. He used his personal card. Flagged. By 2:30 a.m., Damien Cross sat in his car outside a budget motel 40 minutes from the estate, waiting while the night clerk checked whether his debit card would clear. It did. Barely. The room smelled of old carpet and lemon cleaner. The bedspread was thin. The television remote was sticky. A vending machine hummed outside his door like an insect. Damien sat on the edge of the bed in his wedding tuxedo and looked at his reflection in the dark TV screen. He had no mansion, no company, no bride, no wife, no mother willing to open a door. For the first time in years, no one was watching him. So there was no performance left to give. Morning arrived grey. News traveled faster than shame could hide. By noon, headlines spread across business sites and gossip pages. Secret VANC, REXPOSES CEO AT failed wedding. CRSSWELL Properties Board IMOVS DAMIN Cross amid fraud review. VANCE Global cancels $1 billion partnership. Who is AMELIA VANC? That last headline bothered Amelia most. Not because the world knew. Because the world wanted ownership of the story. By afternoon, old photographs emerged. A blurred image of her as a teenager beside Roland. A charity archive listing Amelia Vance as a donor under a private foundation. Speculation about why she had hidden. False stories about revenge plots, secret accounts, and dramatic betrayals. Amelia ignored most of it. She spent the day at Vance Global headquarters, not in her father's office, but in a conference room with the transition team assigned to Crosswell. If Vance Global acquired parts of the damaged company, employees would need protection. Projects had to continue. Tenants in Crosswell-managed buildings could not suffer because Damien had mistaken corporate money for personal decoration. The work steadied her. At 4 p.m., Martin Hale arrived looking exhausted. "I owe you an apology," he said. Amelia glanced up from a folder. For what? For not seeing enough, for seeing some and not acting faster. Damien was skilled at making doubt look like disloyalty. Martin nodded grimly. He learned that at home. Amelia did not disagree. "We can save about 60% of operations," Martin continued, "if Vance Global backs the restructuring." "It will," Amelia said, "under conditions." "Of course. Transparent audit, independent oversight, employee retention where possible, no golden parachute for executives involved in misconduct." Martin looked at her with something like respect. "You sound like your father." Amelia smiled faintly. "I used to fear that. And now I hope I sound like myself." 3 weeks passed. Damien moved from the motel to a short-term rental, then lost that when his accounts were frozen pending civil claims. He sold his watches first, then his cars, then the custom suits that had once made him feel untouchable. His attorneys stopped taking calls after unpaid invoices stacked too high. Vanessa's legal team positioned her as a manipulated consultant. Evelyn gave one carefully worded interview about being heartbroken by poor decisions made by adults. Damien learned the unique loneliness of disgrace. Everyone wanted details, but no one wanted proximity. One rainy evening, he stood outside the old courthouse where he had met Amelia. He had not planned to go there. He had walked for hours after leaving another lawyer's office, where the consultation ended with the phrase asset recovery exposure. His shoes were soaked. His coat was too thin. The city moved around him with indifferent speed. On the courthouse steps, a young woman dropped a folder. Papers scattered across the wet pavement. Damien froze. For a breath, time folded again. Then he bent down and helped her gather them. "Thank you," she said quickly, rushing away. He remained crouched on the steps after she was gone, rain dripping from his hair, a page still in his hand. It was blank. He laughed then, but it broke halfway through. Across town, Amelia attended her first public event as Amelia Vance. It was not a gala. She refused every invitation that treated her betrayal like entertainment. Instead, she appeared at the reopening of a housing assistance center funded by the Vance Foundation, the same non-profit clinic where she had once worked under an alias. Reporters gathered outside, cameras flashed. Roland stood discreetly to the side, letting her take the podium alone. Amelia looked at the crowd and felt the weight of her name settle onto her shoulders. "Not as a cage, as inheritance." "I spent years believing anonymity would show me who people truly were," she said. "It did, but it also showed me who I was when I chose silence over truth. Today, I am choosing differently." She announced a new legal aid fund for women rebuilding after financial betrayal, housing displacement, and coercive divorce settlements. She did not mention Damien. She did not need to. The world understood. In the back of the crowd, Mrs. Alvarez wiped her eyes. After the speech, Roland joined Amelia near the exit. "You did well," he said. "I was terrified. That does not contradict what I said." She smiled. A black car waited at the curb. Elias held the door. Before Amelia entered, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I am sorry, not because I lost everything, because I finally understand I threw away the only person who loved me before I became anything. I won't ask you to forgive me. I just needed to say it once without trying to get something back." Amelia read it twice. Roland saw her expression, him. "Yes. What will you say?" For a long moment, Amelia watched rain bead on the car window. She thought of the courthouse, the rooftop proposal, the cracked wedding photograph, the lawn, the Rolls-Royces, the way Damien had asked, too late, whether any of it had been real. Then she typed, "I hope you become someone who never needs to destroy another person to feel powerful. That is all I can give you." She sent it. Then she blocked the number. Roland said nothing, but his eyes softened. Months later, Crosswell Properties no longer existed under that name. Its healthy assets had been absorbed into a new Vance-backed development group with strict oversight and a new mission focused on ethical housing, commercial renewal, and transparent lending. Former employees who had feared losing everything returned under better leadership. Martin retired. Mrs. Alvarez became head of residence operations for a Vance property division after Amelia personally recommended her. Vanessa settled quietly, surrendering assets and agreeing to cooperate. Her social circle abandoned her with the same speed she had once abandoned dignity. Evelyn moved away from the city, telling anyone who would listen that her son had been ruined by a woman with secrets. But fewer people listened now. The world had seen enough to know the difference between a secret and a trap. Amelia's hidden name had not destroyed Damien. His own choices had simply found the correct witness. As for Damien, he did not vanish dramatically. Men like him rarely do. They shrink first. He took consulting jobs under other people's names. He lived in rented rooms. He learned which friends had been friends and which had been mirrors angled toward success. Some nights, he still dreamed of the wedding aisle, of Amelia stepping out of the Rolls-Royce beside Roland Vance, not angry, not frantic, not broken. That was what haunted him most. Not her power. Her calm. Because her calm proved she had survived his worst long before he suffered her answer. 1 year after the ruined wedding, Amelia returned to Halcyon Crest alone. The estate had been renovated, its management fully absorbed into Vance hospitality. The rose garden looked brighter than she remembered. Perhaps it was the season, perhaps it was simply that she had changed. She walked to the fountain where she and Roland had spoken after the board removed Damien. The water caught sunlight in clean silver threads. From her bag, she removed the cracked wedding photograph. For a year she had kept it in a drawer, unsure why. The fracture across Damien's face remained. Her younger self smiled beside him, unaware of how much pain that smile would one day cost. Amelia did not hate the woman in the photo. She had done her best with the truth she had. "You loved honestly," Amelia whispered to her. "That was never the mistake." She placed the photograph into a small metal tray and struck a match. The paper caught slowly. Damien's face curled first, then hers, then the flowers, the white dress, the frozen promise of forever. Smoke rose into the bright afternoon. When it was done, Amelia closed the tray and sat by the fountain until the wind cooled. Her phone rang. "Roland, you are late for the board luncheon," he said. "I'm aware. You are the chairwoman now. Chairwomen are not late." "Father, you were late to your own acquisition once because you stopped to argue with a horse breeder. That horse was undervalued." Amelia laughed. The sound surprised her. It was light, easy, hers. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. "Amelia." "Yes." Roland paused. "Your mother would be proud." Amelia looked over the roses. For once, the words did not hurt. "I know," she said. She ended the call and rose. At the edge of the garden, Elias waited beside a black Rolls-Royce, the same model that had carried her into Damien's failed wedding, though not the same car. That day, it had felt like a weapon. Today, it was only transportation. Amelia slid into the back seat. As the car pulled away from Halcyon Crest, she did not look back. She had arrived there once as a discarded wife, invited to witness another woman take her place. She left now as Amelia Vance, daughter of Roland Vance, heir to an empire, founder of her own legacy, and a woman who had finally learned that the greatest revenge was not making Damien homeless. It was making sure he no longer lived inside her. And somewhere in the city, in a rented room with peeling paint and a single suitcase by the wall, Damien Cross opened a newspaper and saw her photograph on the business page. Amelia Vance, appointed chairwoman of New Ethical Development Fund. In the picture, she stood beside her father, calm and luminous, wearing the locket he remembered and the ring he had never noticed. For a moment, Damien touched the empty space on his finger where his wedding band had once been. Then he folded the newspaper carefully and placed it on the small table beside him. Outside, rain began to fall. This time, no one came to gather what he had dropped.